Okay, here we are with our SOAPM rock star, George Rogu. You can see his guitars in the back, and I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, I'll start with you. Say hello for everybody, please.
Hello there, interwebs. How's it going?
And Dr. Rogu, welcome to the Pediatric Practice Management Media Cast. How are you doing today?
Oh, no, Chip, it's awesome, Cal. Please.
Awesome, Cass. Thanks. I feel awesome. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you're quite welcome. We're actually here today to hear the story about RBK Pediatrics and what the sort of things that you do to make your practice special. Those of us on SOAPM hear from you from time to time. You're there to stir the pot, which is great. I've known you for a long time, as you and I know, and I've gotten to see your practice grow and change over the years, and I think you have a pretty compelling story to tell. So, if you don't mind, give us some background about your practice, especially before you started making some of the changes that you made.
Well, the practice started, I believe, in 1960 in the basement of Dr. Erwin Reichman. He started it when Comac was like a farm area. The Long Island Express ended where we have our office today. Now it goes out another 30 miles. So we started seeing the local kids in the community. He did house calls. Then they started bringing on more people, Dr. Brown, and a couple of years later they brought on Dr. Kaplan, who is still with us. Everybody knows Dr. A. Michael Kaplan.
Yep.
I joined the practice. Then they moved from the basement to where we are located now, I believe 1964, 1965. So it was the three of them until about 1985, I believe, when Dr. Neil Bellavin, who's with us still, joined the practice. And then I joined in 1996. Back then, they were just on paper. Their progress notes were god-awfully short, like one-liners, otitis A, OM, AMOX.
Right, the good old days.
The good old days. So these, I found some of their old charts back in 1962, where on one sheet of paper, front and back, literally, there must have been about 40 visits.
I totally believe it.
So back in 1996, I joined them. I was still in residency, and then Dr. Kaplan said to me, we need to get a practice management software. Can you look? That's around the time the internet's become popular, so I looked at yahoo.com or something. I typed in pediatric software. PCC was the one that came up. The only one that came up, actually. They had.
Did you fire? So you said you didn't fire up Excite or one of those?
Those things didn't exist back then. In 90s. We were just into practice management at that time. You have to, when you do a practice, you have to do it piecemeal, one thing at a time. And
no, I'm talking about the browser Excite. There used to be a browser called Excite, Dr. Rogu.
Do they? No, I think back then.
Yeah, not the Excite we deal with today. But
No, I think back then it was Lycos.
Yeah, you probably had to use Netscape, though.
Yeah, it was back in the Netscape days. Anyway, so PCC, Pediatric Practice Management, came up. They had a pretty good website for, that time. And, now let's demo the thing. So PCC sends me over this big monster box with a laptop in it. So I tinker around with it, and who was the salesman? The famous Chip Hart, back in the days when he was selling things. So I really didn't know much about anything back then.
Was he as cocky back then as he is now?
Yeah.
No, so things have not changed. That's consistency. At least we know that much from Chip.
Yeah, you're born with it. You can't help it.
All right, good.
It was cocky, and they were the best thing. Back in those days, computers were like $7,000 or $8,000 a piece. They were using these monochrome monitors, like in banks used to have. So it wasn't that bad of a deal. So between hardware and software, they set us up. They replaced what we used to have, which was about maybe 2 computers that they had in the office, and all the resided like on one of those big floppy disks. Remember those?
Yeah.
5 1/4, I think they were. So that somebody would go from one computer to the other to transfer data. So then PCC came in. they, they did their practice management. Basically, they cleaned up house for us. They took us from the dark ages to modern civilization. And then we've been with PCC ever since. And I've seen PCC grow from a bunch of young people to mature adults now. They were, they tried to keep ahead of the times as best as possible. Their technology was always great. They never used any Windows, never crashed. It always worked. Any report you wanted always worked. Unfortunately, I seem to be the thorn in their side because I always want something else, something new that's not ready yet for prime time. And they always, they had to have the security stuff going and things like that. But I can understand that. It has to work before you sell it.
Well, now, let me ask you, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when you guys first went online and you went through the typical pain of just switching systems and, you guys were on a little bit of cruise control for a while. And something happened. I don't know if there were a precipitating event, but all of a sudden you suddenly became very, very interested in the way your practice ran. And it started in our conversations with your insurance contracts. So tell me about what happened, to this RBK Pediatrics that suddenly went from being a classic Long Island pediatric practice to suddenly having contracts and protocols that were on par with some of the biggest pediatric systems in the Northeast.
Well, what happened was I went to a user conference and I sat in on a couple of lectures. Now, over the years, I would get. I never went to the conferences. I just, would tinker in the background, see what this button did, in Partner, and I started looking at some numbers, and then I said, these numbers are god awful. How can we work for that? So I asked some people around, and they said, well, that's just the way it is. So I went to the conference. You were at that conference. The person that ran it, remember, it was that lady. What was her name? That did the conference.
No. The insurance woman.
Yeah, not Suzanne.
Not Suzanne, but I'll think of her name and I'll yell it out in a minute.
Well, anyway, so I sat down. She spoke. You can talk to them. All the stuff you've been talking about in preaching, Chip.
Yep.
So I listened. I took notes, and then I'd ask my partners, this stuff that they say makes sense. The stuff that Chip says makes sense. Is it real? He says, oh, no, you can't negotiate. You can't do anything with these people. And then I said, either Chip is just cocky, as Brandon would say, and just likes to hear himself talk, he's crazy, or he's right.
There is that. Could be both.
So I took the Chip is probably right. So you helped me out a lot. I learned everything from you, Chip. You helped me.
Oh, don't say that, please.
Oh, no. But it is the truth.
Please don't say that.
He's halfway right.
But he did all the work. He did all the work.
All you did is you showed me the doors and said, walk through that one. Walk through that one.
Now I know why. Now I know why Chip insisted so heavily on having Dr. Rogu on.
Yeah. No, but the thing is, he did all the work. I would say, look, I've seen practices do this, this, and this. This works. This doesn't. And one of the differences between Dr. Rogu and most practices is he said, okay, I'll do it. He wasn't afraid.
Yeah, I think that's really the message here. Kidding aside, is just that seeing how things are, and then just like this uneasiness of like this isn't the way it should be. But then, okay, there's got to be a solution out there. So instead of complaining and saying, oh, well, this is the way it's always going to be, it's just like, well, no, let's start asking some questions. Let's go to some seminars, and then, obviously, soon we'll hear, what the result of all that was.
Well, I always hate it when I hear the word, well, it's always been done like that. When I hear that, that's when I want to change it automatically.
Yeah.
So, you just go and the insurance people, they're not bad people, they're business people. If you present them a good case, you can sell it. If you just bang the table like most doctors do, I want more money, they're going to say, no, thank you. But if you present it and just tell them why are you special, why are you better, why should you be paid more than the guy down the road? You don't
Then I have two softball questions for you, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Number one, all right, this will be the shorter answer. When you took on the project of improving your contracts using data and reports and so forth, what impact did that have on your bottom line? That's question one.
A very big one.
Did it increase your revenue by 10%, 30%? Give me an idea.
Probably 30% easy.
All right, and how much? I mean, it was a lot of work, but I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have a big practice.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to put a dollar figure on it, but you did some work outside of seeing your patients that brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to your practice.
Seeing the patients is the easy part of the day.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get. That's what I wanted to hear you say. So I'm going to ask you the second question, though. All right. So you said, look, you simply didn't bang your fist on the table and say we're not happy. We didn't like this. We showed these businessmen and these businesswomen why they wanted to give us more money. So what did you show them? What was special about your practice that's different?
Well, I showed them. You taught me to run the reports in the SRS. And then take those numbers and make these nice graphs and show them percentage of, how much. Well, the one big thing is with one company, I remember, we were making the same amount 10 years prior than we were in 2005. So in essence, we were making less money per visit. So that was one angle. You just, you show them that, and they respond to that. They told me, we're not going to come to you to increase your rates if you don't come to tell us and ask. Why should we?
Right.
It's a simple mathematical formula for them. If you sit and wait, why should I give you more money?
That's not in their interest.
No, it's not. So you have to present a case to them. We presented that we were open after hours and on Sundays and in the evening. I presented to them, our well care rates. I presented to them that we had good vaccine proportions. We presented to them, our asthma visits to the ER are not as great as the other people down the road. It was just ideas. Half the time I think it was true, but I couldn't quantify it really. Now I can quantify everything.
Right.
I didn't have fancy reports or anything. I have computers. Everything was on paper.
Yeah.
What else did we talk about? I mean, you told me what to tell them.
Well, there's one thing, though, that I attribute wholly to you. I mean, it was based on ideas that I've gotten from our other clients, but you're the one who put the name on it and really put it into action. And so I'd like you to describe for our thousands of listeners, describe your attack of the clones strategy.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. That was our biggest company did not want to negotiate with us. This company generated 40% of our business. Now, you always say at the conferences, drop them, tell them you'll drop them. Lynn Kramer had the story of, she had a pile of letters and inside was blank pieces of paper just to call their bluff. So what we did is they didn't want to negotiate, they didn't want to talk, we're doing fine, everything's great and so forth. This one was a bigger company, so I had to use the resources of a consultant. She helped us, and they still didn't want to negotiate and speak. So what I did is I had the email addresses of, back then, a crude collection of email addresses, but we did have about 3,000, 4,000 emails. So I just wrote a letter to all our patients saying, you have this insurance, we are working for less money than we were 10 years ago, and that I had asked the patients to write a story. That's what I did. I said, write a story of when RBK went above and beyond the general pediatrician's work. What did we do special for you? And call, and I put the links of the VPs and anything I could find, anybody of any importance. So within 10 minutes, I had like 5 stories. And then we forwarded it to our account rep, who immediately deleted everything. So we had to go higher than him. And then all these letters, I got a fax number from a consultant or something, and we would fax it to them. So all this noise, all this chatter was going all over the place. And then all of a sudden they'll say, okay, we'll come and we'll talk to you.
And
so
you might have just given us my favorite 5 minutes of...
I know. I'm writing. I was just writing this down as he was talking.
Oh,
where's the attack of the clones comes from? What's the reference? I like that, but I don't get the reference though.
I don't remember where that came from, Chip, but I must have watched.
You said. I remember you sent me an email saying, "This guy has no idea what he's gotten into. I'm going to release my attack of the clones. My clones." He said something like, "I'm going to release my clones in them. I have 3,000 email addresses that I'm going to mail to you right now," and you did it.
Yeah.
And you know, you were one of the practices I've heard this from where they called you up and said, "Stop, stop telling your clients to get in touch with me."
Yeah. So
and
they were bombarding them, and you know, I think what I did was I put a letter. Yes, I wrote a letter that I wanted the people to write, and I put it on some kind of a server, so all they had to do, just log into a thing and put their name to it. Oh, a form. Put their name to the form, and then it would go automatically to them. And then, again, we faxed all these things, and then they came to the office.
And did you get a new contract?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I want to just, I'm repeating this, not because you don't understand it, Dr. Rogu, and I know Brandon does too, but I just want people to understand. You were dealing with, we won't name them, but one of the worst insurers in the country, and they represented 40% of your practice, which for most people means they're afraid. And you looked them in the eye, and you engaged your patients, and they came to the table and negotiated with you.
Well, they came to the building. They came to us in their fancy limousine.
Right, and, oh yeah, I forgot how you told me that story.
So our rep came, the guy I was dealing with, some shot that I found by accident, and then the really senior VP of some sort. So, you know, I spoke to my partners and the consultant, and, you know, we decided on what we wanted, and then we said, we're going to go for this, nothing less than this. We all agreed. So then we get into the room, and now I'm not speaking anymore. I'm letting the consultant speak. Can I say her name?
Yeah, please.
Suzanne Madden. So she did all the speaking now because now it gets too emotional and you can't do it anymore. So she has to buffer in between. Well, out of the gate, they came with 5% more than what we agreed we wanted.
That to me, that makes my day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, you know, so I said I'm happy with that, right?
Yep.
And Suzanne Madden says no. What about escalators? It's like, escalators? I said, let's sign and run. She says, no, we can't get escalators. So she tacked on another 3% per year.
That's the dream.
Yeah. So it worked out good.
Now, so and I want to be clear, you're surrounded on all sides by, for example, an enormous pediatric mega group.
Correct.
All right, so most people would have sort of thrown in the towel. I know plenty of practices in your area who've just sort of given in because they're like, we're not big enough to do anything. It's not like you're a 15, 20, 40, 60 doctor practice, you know?
Yeah. Well, what happens is, you know, it's in my practice. There's 5 partners, so everybody has their little thing that they do. Like the medical home, I don't get involved in. Somebody else does.
Thank God.
Payroll, health insurance, other things, another guy does. Another doctor does insurance follow-up, claims, personnel. You know, our newest doctor does a lot of the social media, news stuff, new age stuff. So we can spread it out. When you're one person, it's definitely hard. It's hard. But what I've learned with the insurance carriers is they got to take you to a level. They can give you 20% easily out of the gate. If you prove to them you're worth it. But, you know, it depends on the spread. So you can't ask for too much, and if your numbers are so low, it's going to be a big spread, and they don't like that because they just have to adjust their numbers. So they can't offer you a 50% raise. That's too much for 1 year. So they'll give you 20%, 30%, whatever, and then in a couple of years you go back and get another 20%. But each and every time you have to present a case to them. Why are you better? And mind you, this whole thing that we did was pre-EHR, pre-anything.
Right.
This was back days when PCC was the only ally we had, and PCC wasn't terribly sophisticated then, other than the reporting stuff. They didn't have the dashboard. Remember, the dashboard didn't exist then.
No, not at all. You had to do it all yourself.
You had to run reports and spreadsheets and stuff, but at least you had where to capture the number. Now it's easy with the dashboard. Everything's in your face.
That's cheating, yeah.
That's
cheating.
Yeah, but this is worthy of a blog post alone. And I'm writing notes here. This is what I've been hearing for the benefit of our listeners. Preparation, huge, right? Even when you didn't have all the benefits of an EMR. So some people say, well, my PM isn't all that great or whatever. I mean, when Dr. Rogu was doing it, he didn't necessarily have the same data that he has now. So now it's much more easier, right? So preparation, data, understanding where you're coming from. The next thing that I wrote down is that on how Dr. Rogu used his patients as leverage. I think that is something that we perhaps don't even consider, but the fact of the matter is that we are trusted sources of information, and most of our patients love us to death, and they'll almost be willing to do anything. I love that Dr. Rogu, even with all his preparation and using the patients as a leverage, went for outside help. I just think that we bark a lot about, oh, are we going to spend so much money on a consultant to come in here? When I think that Dr. Rogu would agree that was money super well spent, and it might have been even expensive for them at the time. But then knowing that you have an expert there. And just merely that little extra 2-3% every year, I mean, how that kind of paid for itself. I always make the analogy about athletes on how good athletes are. And when I thought about this, it was about the Summer Olympics, not the Winter Olympics. On Michael Phelps, Michael Phelps before these last Olympics, he knew how to win. He knew how to train. But he still had a coach. I've always found that very interesting, that he still has a coach. Tiger Woods still has a coach, and yet they are the best in the world, and they have already proven that they are the best in the world, yet they have coaches. So why would we go into, even if we're as good as we think we are, why would we go into a negotiation as critical as what Dr. Rogu was explaining without some sort of a coach that can help us work that out? The other thing that I wanted to highlight that I think is very important is that many of us give up too soon. But Dr. Rogu showed that he was relentless and consistent with his approach. And I think that my guess is that they bank, and when I say they, the insurance company bank on the fact that we're going to get tired of it, or we're going to abandon the mission. But Dr. Rogu is a clear example on how we should not. And then this is gold right here. The incremental negotiations. So this last portion that you talked about on the spread, it's so big. I didn't even think about that because, of course, if you're so far down the rope or far, I mean, to bring you even back to par is so hard for them because the numbers look. I mean, even though they're paying you the same, in their view, they're giving you a huge increase, right? And so it doesn't work well for them. So if you do okay, let's do a 20-30%. Like, for example, I negotiated with also one of the most hated ones, and I was trying to hit it out of the park because I thought that was going to be my one and only chance to get to sit down with them. But you just showed me that the percents that I got was, be comfortable with that, but then leave it open where you can come back next year and say, hey, listen, let's talk about another 10%. Let's talk about another 15%, and do this on an ongoing basis. Man, this was awesome. This was just absolutely awesome.
All right, Dr. Rogu, wait. I accidentally hit the mute button on you, so you have to unmute yourself. It was me over here and by accident. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. The reason that a lot of practices, I think, got into trouble is because the contracts would come in and they were evergreened. Evergreen means it just renews every single year and you have to do nothing. but it doesn't say anything about an escalator. It doesn't link it to any Medicare rates. It doesn't link it to anything. It's just the market street value. So if the market street value is X amount, and that was from 10 years ago, and now 10 years later you're still at that number or a little bit of an increase, you know, you're stuck. You're stuck. And so I had just recently a contract that I redid for the second time. This was one of the earlier ones. I got it. It was a terrible rate, and then we got a good rate. But the vaccine administrations back then, for some reason, I dropped the ball on that one, and we were, you know, we were fortunate to get an increase. This was before all those new codes and everything came out, and back in those days, a lot of the companies weren't even paying the vaccine admins. So we were very happy with, you know, whatever, $12 that they were giving us and so forth. And so I let it go. We couldn't go back. And, you know, when I wanted to go back, they says, you can't renege on a deal that you've already made. So I said, okay, let it go. Time went on, and I forgot about this one. So it started to get a little stale, but not offensively stale. You could stand it still. So I redid it recently and spoke to them. So I got what I wanted on the, you know, the E&M codes and all the other stuff. Then I remembered about the admins. You know what? I couldn't budge them to, you know, a higher percentage because they said, well, from where you are, where you want to be, it's way too much of a spread. You know, we can bump you up to X percentage, and then slowly we'll, you know, next time we speak, we can entertain this further. You know, of course, I couldn't let it go at that X percentage. I had to get Y, so I had to get a little bit more. And then I told her, okay, we'll do that, fine, but I'm not going to talk to you in 3 years. I want to speak to you in 2. No, 1. And then we ended up at 2. So I'll remember to do the admins in another 2 years. Comparatively to what we had, this was a home run. So, yeah. So you have to see where your spread is. The spread can't be too great.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, I think it's an important lesson that you're not going to win them all, right? I mean, it's a negotiation, and some things, you know, there's also mistakes that you're going to make, and now in the future you won't make that mistake, right? So I mean, you only get wiser by the failures that you've had. You don't get wiser by just simply, you know, riding smooth and having for the good times, right?
What happened on this particular one? It was a win. It wasn't a win like I wanted.
Right.
I would have run batted in. It wasn't a home run. All right. It was good
enough. You got a single or a double instead of, you know, hitting a home run.
It was good enough. It was good enough. But it's how you present the case to them. Present it in a logical fashion, you know, and you'll win.
Dr. Rogu, I want to switch gears if it's okay with Chip here, since he was getting all the glory a while ago, you know, about how good he was. You know what?
He did help a lot. I really owe him. I know
the only reason I pick on Chip is because I just have to, 1, and 2 is that you only pick on the people that you really, really like, right? If you don't have a good relationship with something, you would dare not pick on them. So,
oh, yeah, if you're not, I can take it. I can take it. Don't worry about me.
That's the great thing that we have with PCC. PCC, yeah, it's a practice management software. Okay, there was something on SOAPM. What is the best practice management building software out there? You know, I was thinking about it, and PCC is a great practice management software. They're more than that. They're like your partners in practice management. I mean, I got a question, I need a report or something. I go to Chip. He's not software. He's the guy that works the software. And he finds it and he advises and tells. So there's other added stuff with PCC.
Not to make this a PCC commercial, but here's my perspective. I've always criticized practice management systems because there are not practice management systems. They are claim submission systems that, and then they also might do your scheduling. That's basically it. So I always told the other guys, it's like, don't call yourself a practice management. Quicken. That would be a practice management system. I mean, if you start to think about it, like Quicken is more of a practice management system than your software is. But with PCC, you do get that practice management because it's not just simply the claims and the submission portion of it, which I don't really care about too much because, quite frankly, I think all of them do there's some advantages here and there, but I mean that's kind of like a commodity. The value is understanding the business the data, the business data, or the capability of analyzing your company with the key indicators that allow you to make improvements. And if there's another practice management system that can do that for you, then by all means, go for it. But that's really what you should be looking for in a practice management system, one that truly helps you manage your practice as opposed to just help you manage your claims, right? I mean, that's okay. But that's enough about PCC. Let's talk about what I do want to talk about. Is I found unique your perspective on how you've gone a different route in terms of integration with your technology. You're very first. Let me say that you're very technology driven. And you use technology to really leverage the practice in many, many ways, not only from the clinical, to make you a better doctor, but also on servicing your patients and also on just simply efficiency of your practice. But you've taken a different approach because the consensus would be we want everything under one umbrella because there's benefits in terms of integration, their systems talk to each other. It's almost like Microsoft Office, where Excel you can share data from Excel to Windows. I mean, Excel to Word and whatever. Instead of using, I don't even know what another word processing, and then and then having to do some modifications in order for them to talk to each other. So, tell us a little bit about your philosophy of that. What you guys have a set up in terms of your technology, and why you've gone this route.
Well, everything we spoke about up until here was pre-anything computer. Everything was on paper back in. The only thing that was PCC was computer. Back in 2008, when we wanted to get into the EHR, business, not business, using an EHR,
yeah.
I got involved with some state grant that wanted to, help pay for some of the the expenses for an EHR. They paid 50% of our expenses, including software and hardware. When you have 10 doctors, it adds up to a lot of money. Lots of computers, terminals, and servers and things, and it makes it complicated. So I had the EHR this was pre-PCC's EHR. It wasn't even thought of yet, I think, but it was just starting to think. PCC gave me the idea because at their conferences, John Canning would say, we have a couple of vendors that we integrate with nicely. We have nothing to do with them, but if you're ready for an EHR, use them. I always kept my eye on simplicity. I needed something simple that was pediatric specific. So I always back in those days, they were called JMJ, then they became Encounter Pro. Now they're big touchscreen computers, very simple, efficient. Work management, the EHR version of a practice management like PCC's. So they were fully integrated. So I would work in the EHR, it would just drop into PCC, and the whole cycle went perfectly. So back in those days, there was no PCC EHR, so I did the next best thing because I knew these guys were going to do something good in the future, but I needed it now. Now I was involved in this grant. All right. The grant wanted us to use an all-in-one product that their consultant was pushing. Okay, I won't mention their name, but and they came to me and said, "Don't take Excite Health's EHR. Take this EHR, and you'll get the practice management piece of it for free." Okay, most people would have jumped on that because they didn't know what the EHR was. They heard the word free for practice management. They would have went on it. Let me tell you, fast forward a couple of years, all those guys that went on that, they hate their EHR. Their practice management is horrible. So I continued with the interface with the EHR, with the practice management. It cost me more money, but it works.
Well, one of the things that I always mention to people is that they pay way too much attention to how much something costs when it comes to the EHR. I always tell people to ignore that. If you get a free EHR and it reduces your output by 0.5%, 1%. If it makes you 1% slower, then it doesn't matter what the other EHR costs. It doesn't matter at all. 1% is more than almost every EHR in the country costs you on an annual basis. And so, you know, in terms of
here, the line that Dr. Sorry to interrupt you, but the line that I wish I would have came up with, but actually Dr. Christoph Diasio did, which is marriage is less of a commitment than choosing an EMR. So I love that quote, and it's so critical. And I love Dr. Rogu's position where it cost us more money, but it was the right choice in the long run. And I've always tried to take that approach. I mean, money is certainly important, but it should not be the only. You know, it should not be number one in most cases. All right, in most cases, it should not be number one in terms of consideration. When you're making either an EMR or opening another location or hiring a new doctor, I mean, in most cases, it's important to see kind of what the value of it is and not just simply focus on the money. So I love that tip.
Well, if you would think about it, if I was to go the free route and take the practice management that went with that EHR wasn't good for pediatrics to begin with. The free practice management was no good, but just changing all those fields, changing all those insurance lines and the claims going out. Heck, it's complicated when you change your email address.
Right.
Everything going. Could you imagine all those millions of lines? We would have lost so much money to take a free product than.
And here's a consistency that I'm noticing in how Dr. Rogu kind of makes decision. He had a very clear vision on what exactly they wanted, right? So they didn't know what they wanted until they saw it, but at least at the very least, they said simplicity, pediatric specific, and then a few other things. But you were clear on exactly what you wanted. So for you, once you found it, it didn't matter that you paid more for it because it actually went with your objective of what exactly that you wanted. I think that's another very insightful tip for those of us that are trying to make decisions.
Yeah.
So, okay, you went with a totally separate, so you went with a CMR, and now you have PCC, you have, at the time it was called EncounterPro, it might still be called EncounterPro, because it fit your needs, you loved it, and I understand that you also customized it, to really fit your needs, so that the work didn't stop there. You bought something, but then you made the extra effort to make sure that the system worked for you. But you didn't stop there. So moving forward, and I know that we're kind of traversing several years here, but how did you kind of then you added more things?
Well, I always find things that I don't like in something, and I try to find somebody else that maybe does it a little bit better or does something to make work a little easier. For example, our scheduler piece. All right, there was some questions on SOAPM about, who does scheduling. So I look over there.
So specifically with doctor scheduling, we're not talking about patients, right?
No, doctor scheduling.
Yeah.
I didn't like somebody would write the whole doctor schedule, which was like a mathematical formula on a piece of paper in bad handwriting, and then somebody would have to go into the practice management piece in the scheduler in PCC and input it manually. Now, how many times did we have typos, they couldn't read, we had doctors working that were not really working, and so forth. And then the doctors never knew when they were working because they would have a piece of paper that they would lose. It says that it has to be a scheduler that could interface with the practice manager. So I found this Amion thing that it looked really easy to use. We kind of like customized it to work to our schedule. So I went over to PCC and I said, I need to interface this somehow. It sounds like it's simple. You're just taking doctors' names and you're dropping them into fields in PCC. So the guys did the magic stuff behind the scenes, and indeed, it wasn't all that complicated. So now the doctor works on the computer screen, does the schedule. It goes to our phones. The doctors all have it, their whole month schedule. We push a button, and it takes all of 30 seconds for the entire SCROD schedule to be uploaded into PCC. The only time there's a mistake is when there's end-user error. The doctor makes a mistake. That's it.
So you found a system that worked for you, and then you bullied PCC into creating an interface so that you wouldn't have to do the work. Is that basically, you didn't have to do it by hand? Is that basically
what
I'm hearing here?
Yeah, basically. I didn't.
So, is this something that we want to announce to everybody as a feature, Chip? Anybody? You're muted, Chip. You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Chip.
It won't let me. It won't let me hit my own button. Yeah, I don't mind at all. The Amion interface works just fine. We think it's great. We show it to people all the time, actually, and I don't know why more people don't use it. We have 2 or 3 clients who use it. Dr. Rogu is definitely first, and we show it to some of our bigger clients, and they don't jump to it for some reason. And to be honest, I think the biggest reason they don't, and this is sort of a testament to Dr. Rogu's circumstance, is they're afraid of losing the control, even though they're controlling themselves. They don't want to. Some office manager, because that's 9 times out of 10 what it is, really likes the way that she's been doing the schedule in Excel over the last 30 years and doesn't want to change her way of doing it.
That's it.
So anyway, the amion.com, we'll give them a free ad. We'll see if they even find this.
It's job security. It would take somebody about 3 hours to input 1 month's worth of the schedule into Scrum.
Yeah, and Scrod, by the way, is just so it makes sense to people who don't know PCC. That's the name of one of our scheduling programs. Our programs have funny names.
No, it does take a long time. And then when there's changes, and then the doctor says, "Hey, I'm going, vacation's coming out, so they got to go back in there and block that." So yeah, it is very time consuming.
Yeah, I also find the same thing often with, or the place where I see it the most is right now is with electronic claims posting, ERAs, posting your EOBs. I bet only 2/3 of our clients are using that free functionality to the extent that they can, and it really boils down to billing staff not wanting to give up control, and they want to maintain the job security. So, Dr. Rogu doesn't care about that. He wants to do it the right way.
Right.
And even with the electronic posting, it took us a while to get it, and I went to my people and asked them, it's part of what we get. Why don't we use it? Well, they don't have every single company. Who cares? If they got 50% of our companies, that's 50% less work that we got to do. You can spend your time on other things, recalling patients, and so forth and so on. Important things, customer service.
Right. Now, here's the thing another thing that I want to highlight in terms of kind of moving forward is that Chip and I have talked about this before, is the importance of finding stuff that works for your practice. So yeah, you can ask people, but just because you're tied into something doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use, because there are things that we all love about PCC, and there are things that no software, or even with Encounter Pro or OP or whatever, nobody loves the Pro 100%, right? But the other thing is that we all have the opportunity to find exactly what fits us and unique, because we're all unique, and I think that that's very important, because it's like, what do you use? What do you use? And it's like, yeah, I can tell you, but it's important to understand that it works for you. And I think that this is a perfect example of Dr. Rogu has a great PM system, found the best PM system that he thinks is the best one for his practice, went and found the best EMR that he thinks is the best one for EMR, and then the scheduling was a problem, so he went out and did that, and then you've also moved on to some other things because basically for the same reasons, because you want to find what you think is the best in each one of those categories.
Well, yeah.
Tell us about one of your most recent projects.
The next thing that happens with all this meaningful use, every year there's something happening, and I think you have to be on the ball and figure it out, because computer companies are great, but sometimes it's hard for them because they get hit with a lot of vendors to interface, and they don't know who they're talking to. So I knew that the patient portal was going to be an important thing in the future for meaningful use. Okay, I knew that because I knew PCC has a patient portal, but I knew since I didn't have their EHR, I wasn't able to fulfill that. Now our company, the Exide Health company, the EHR company, they were developing something. Everybody's developing something, all right? And I always end up being the guinea pig. But, you know, one day on SOAPM, somebody posts, you know, what is it with this Concierge MD? Does somebody use it? Does anybody know about it? So immediately I looked into it. I looked at their website. It looked great. So I called up the people, and I demoed it within an hour of the post. And then I saw that they had online appointment scheduling in real time with your scheduler. Now, that's been something that I've been bothering PCC to do for many, many years. They don't think it's important. I think it's very important. That's the future. All right? And then we moved on to the patient scheduling, how they can get the vaccine information uploaded so the mother can see it on the iPhone, the past medical history, the growth parameters, the charts, the well visits, lots of other cool things like recallers and communication with
you can pay your bills online also.
What's that?
You pay your bills online.
Yeah, you can pay your bills online. Lots of little things that, you know, your car has it. Your automobile service has all these things. The doctor's office should have it also, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I did is I found that their system was really, really good. It seemed to be pediatric specific. Now I have another tool. I have to just get the right people to talk. So I obviously made a phone call to Chip and the folks at PCC, and I made a phone call to the VPs over at Exide Health, the EHR company. And I said to them, you got to get a portal. You don't have a portal. These people have it. It's easily interfaceable. They do all the heavy lifting. You just got to provide the data. Went to PCC because I needed now pieces of both from both worlds. PCC was able to work with them and guide them as to how to get reports out of PCC so we can get our appointments put onto their portal so people can make appointments online. They get the medical data from the EHR. So it seems to be a cycle. It just keeps going round and round. Just getting the right people to talk at the right companies rather than the lower level sales guys to talk to another sales guy who now has to push it up to another higher level, who has to pay attention. I just go to the top of the food chain, and I try to get them to speak.
Well, you go to the top of the food chain because you've built a relationship with a lot of these people for a very, very long time. So it's not like anybody could call the VP of anything and they're gonna get up. So that's because you are who you are, and the time and investment, and obviously you have a great trajectory here and a great history of making progress and everything else. But the important thing is, again, just to highlight for me anyways, what I'm learning here is that it's okay to have all these different systems. Yeah, there are other challenges, right? I mean, there's challenges because you have to get people to talk to each other. You have to get the concierge people to write code. And then have the people on the Excite side say, yeah, it's okay for you to come in and take a look at our databases. You know, so there is some coordination there, but you haven't settled for what everybody else is offering. You're like, well, no, this is another route, and perhaps for other people, you know, they went the OP route, which has, I understand it, a very comprehensive, very robust portal, and people love it. But it's not. You're not necessarily. You know, you have the capabilities of creating whatever it is that you want to create and customizing it for yourself. So it's not just a matter of going with, you know, all or nothing. And I think that's a important option. And if you want to go with the one vendor, because granted, it is easier to make one phone call when something goes wrong, right? The problem that you and I have, because by the way, I've followed Dr. Rogu's steps essentially in terms of getting just basically his setup is my setup. It's difficult because when you have a problem, then it's the pinpoint where the problem is so you have that challenge sometimes of trying to identify because you have so many people and it's not just one phone call. You know, so but then on the other hand, I'm not tied into anybody, so if they're not working out for me, I just go and move and find who's the other person as opposed to be locked into the EMR and the portal. And I don't know people that are with OP that, you know, they love certain aspects of OP, but they can't go anywhere because, you know, they have everything under OP. And I'm not knocking OP or anything. I'm just saying that that's just kind of the route. That's just kind of the pros and cons of. There's advantages and disadvantages, and we just happen to explain why we think this actually works better for us. But by no means is it the way.
Right. Well, the business of medicine is so complicated, technology-wise. I mean, how can one company do it all well in a short amount of time? You know, so that, our company that does the EHR, I think they're going into the practice management. How can they do that well quickly for somebody like me? I need somebody that's been proven a long time ago. But I have been seeing like the Concierge MD company, the portal. They have new technology. New technology is so much easier to use, to manipulate, to adjust. When you deal with a little bit of the older stuff, that's where it gets a little bit more clunky. But we have from our PCC scheduler, our whole entire schedule goes into the concierge portal. So a patient can log in and look for different variables of who they want to see, what time for what visit. They make their appointment. It goes back to our dashboard. And then now we need a human intervention where somebody has to find that appointment, take it, and put it manually into PCC because we do not have.
As if somebody would have made a phone call essentially, but instead of making a phone call, you're getting a notification to put that in.
Correct. You get a notice, so somebody has to go put it in manually, block up the spot, and then we have to reply to the patient.
Yeah.
If you think about it, Ticketmaster, okay? You used to go best available ticket. They give you whatever. Now you can go and you can pick your seats. Why do you think they're always sold out? Because people can pick what they want, as opposed to letting a computer just run and just give you 2 seats there, 2 seats there. I mean, they're so sophisticated that you can pick what seats you want, and if you have a Facebook account, if your friend is sitting there, you can pick a seat next to your friend on Facebook. I mean, it's crazy, but we can use something like that, and the people that come to my office are the people that buy tickets on Ticketmaster through Facebook and stuff. Yeah. Young generation.
We've brought this up several times where the people that are coming to our offices are the ones, and we even talked to Dr. Werner that we haven't published it, but she's on the line here with us right now, and she's developing this cool app, and I think it's going to be gangbangers for her because it's going to be like. The demographic that she's putting this into people's hands is the demographic that buy tickets on Ticketmaster for years now because they do banking online, they buy everything on iTunes, their credit card is already stored on Hulu Plus, on Netflix, on all these things. They make their appointments to take in their car for service using an app. Like the other day I got in a little fender bender. And then Geico, I use Geico. Geico's like, download the app. You can file the entire claim, through the app. Take a picture, so you don't even have to have an adjuster come out to your place. And I was just, and these are, our young patients are the ones that are doing this, and we're falling behind. But I want to, stress. You were saying that not everybody can be good at everything. I also want to make a point that, as much as we love the vendors that we work with. Their priorities sometimes might be in alignment with your priorities, but oftentimes they're not because they have other customers, they have other, they have another business model. So I always kid Chip about on how he's always saying on how meaningful use is taking a lot of resources away, and they're not a big company, and I'm like, yeah, poor vendor, can't get, and of course I give them a hard time because that's just what I do. But I mean, there's obviously truth to that. There's only so many resources that you have. So as much as I would want PCC to develop other stuff, I mean, they have a priority, and they made a business decision that they have to continue. Same thing with Excite, for example. So when you're not getting what you're getting, then you're going to have to go somewhere else because guess what? You have your priorities. Your practice has also priorities, and at the end of the day, it's your practice's priority. It's not anybody else's.
Yeah. Well, you have to keep on it, and you can't just wait for a vendor to develop something for you. They will in a couple of years, probably, but you have to be on the ball. I do like the model that the Excite Health, the EHR folks do. where they try. I guess they're supposed to be with meaningful use, but they can't like provide totally everything. So their system is just like PCC's, where they can give data out to almost anybody and take data in. So a lot of the meaningful use reporting goes through another portal that we have, the Clinigence.com. So they log in, they map and they sequence the data that needs to be followed, and then they do all their numerators and denominators. I mean, when I did my meaningful use, attestations for the 90 days clinical, I got some reports out of Excite Health, which is great, but I had a lot of the core clinical measures taken from Clinigence. So I just pulled the numerators and the denominators, dumped it into the CMS website, and I was done.
Yeah, Clinigence, just to clarify, so Clinigence is a vendor that works with our EHR.
Correct.
And it does sophisticated reporting that helps us because they don't really have it all. So we can log on to, in essence, a portal that draws the data from our practices
on a nightly basis.
Yeah, on a daily basis, and we have an accurate picture of who hasn't gotten immunizations, who's behind, and you can click a button and it shows you here are all the people that have not, and here are the standards in order for you to meet meaningful use by just, from 20 from a deficit of 20 patients, by getting 5 more. You've already, they give you some guidelines to say, okay, you can make meaningful use under these circumstances for this, only with adding 5 more people, with their varicella vaccine or whatever.
There's all these interfaces where they're a little bit of a hang-up, but once they get set up and they work just fine. Chip, you'll be very proud of me. My newest project, I used the PCC dashboard, okay? What did I do? I went in and I went to look for, because I'm determined to win this year the clinical award from PCC this summer. Last year we got the financial, and we didn't do too good on the clinical. So we're scrubbing we're scrubbing everything, looking to find out. I work with Tim all the time, asking him what can we do better. So I looked at we were behind like on teens physicals. Everybody cries that we're 500 visits less this month than we were last year, and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. But what did they do about it? They were waiting for the phone to ring. Well, it's not ringing anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
We vaccinated everybody with the flu. We gave Prevnar. Nobody's sick. So we have to follow, again, Chip is right, recall and recall and recall. My girls, I would give them the reports in the hand to call up. People are not home. They leave messages. So I did one better. I had Tim put the email addresses on all those people on their reports. I copy the email addresses. They're my email addresses, our patients. I go into Constant Contact and I make a nice little newsletter kind of thing geared for whatever the visit is. 4-year-old visit. Your child is overdue. I take some of the educational materials out of the Concierge MD for a 4-year-old visit and say why it's important to go have Johnny get his 4-year-old visit, the developmental, psychosocial, all that kind of stuff. And, oh, by the way, we do these vaccines, the MMR and the chicken pox and the flu and whatever. And then I put a hyperlink at the bottom of the newsletter, and you can make your appointment right now. And it links to, it links to people that have an account with the Concierge MD already, so they can book their appointment. And I also have a link on our website, which is just basically a form, which is just an appointment request. Let me tell you, within 10-15 minutes, I already get 1 or 2 appointments. And I did nothing but just make a little newsletter. It took me a while to make it age-specific, but now for the next month, I'm good to go. So I have all these things with 50, 60 emails.
Chip has been playing that tune for years on creating a letter, age-specific letter. I've done the letters. I send them out how important it is, but I have never made them age-specific. I try to just basically emphasize the importance of wellness. General
specific, it hits a home run.
Yeah, but I've never done it.
Brandon, what would Disney do? What would Disney do? Would they send a generic one? No. They would send you a letter knowing, boy, last time you were here, you really loved Magic Kingdom. Well, guess what?
Yep.
We just added an. You have to make it specific. Oh, you're in for like Dr. Rogu. Oh, your son missed his 15-year-old well visit. Well, in the state of New York, you have to have you have to have a well visit within a year in order to get your driver's license. So why don't you book it now, so you don't find out that your kid can't get his driver's license or whatever. Make it specific.
Yeah.
You got to give them the reason. So, Dr. Rogu, do we have much more time with you? Because I have one question, if you have time.
Okay, one question.
All right.
My kids for
All right,
check
one question.
12 o'clock.
All right, I want you to tell us about this. Okay, hold on here. Ready? Hold on. This is your new project that I think is the coolest thing that you do. Hold on. Tell us about. Tell us about this. No, not the phone call.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so tell us about this.
The urgent care, another successful story.
So wait, let me interrupt though. For people who are listening and not able to watch, you are on the screen. I have this pretty fantastic set of neon signs that says "Open 631-666-KIDS RBKPediatrics.com, the Pediatric Urgent Care." So tell us what you did. Tell us what you learned.
You know, urgent cares are opening up all over Long Island. They're usually adult-specific urgent cares. They're opening up on our streets. They're taking business away from everybody. And what do? You hear it on SOAPM. You complain. Well, they're taking business away. We're not seeing patients. They're going there. Chip has always said, make yourself more available. I don't want to be available after 5 o'clock. Hire somebody who does, then. Hire somebody who does.
I love it. I don't want to be available after 5 o'clock.
But it's true. It's true. It's true. You don't have to do it all.
No.
You can hire someone to do it.
That's it. So most offices, I've learned, they function as an urgent care in general. Our office always acted as an urgent care. We worked people in. You did lacerations. You did asthma care. I guess a lot of the solo guys, they don't. I don't know anything else but urgent care anyway in general pediatrics. So what we did is I went out and I got an urgent care certification. Get a certification. What does a certification mean? You got to have availability, walk-ins, laboratories, all this kind of stuff. It's a list of things that we did anyway. So all we did is now, with this certification, you go to the insurance carriers and say, hey, look, I'm an important person. I got an urgent care certification. We do this, that, and the other thing. And now they're your friend again. So more services that you're providing to the community. So,
and as the business guy, one of the things that I love about Dr. Rogu's approach is that his cost. So tell us a little bit about that, because it wasn't a big investment. Tell me, because you were using basically
same facility.
Same facility, yeah. So, I mean, obviously you get doctors and things like that, but it wasn't like you went out and got a new facility for this place, right?
A lot of the urgent cares, when they develop, their budget is of about $800,000. You decide, I want to build Brandon and Chip's urgent care. You need to have $800,000 to invest in the building, the leases, the contracting. You need to have a couple of months worth of rent, payroll before you see your first patient.
That's $800,000 of Long Island dollars. If you're in Kansas, you don't need $800,000.
And that's before you see your first patient. So we already had the rent was paid. The building was there. We had a great parking lot. It's in a strip mall. All I did is, I got the certification. I got some doctors to work it, put some buzz out on Facebook, and paid for the advertising thing like Chip suggested or Brandon suggested last year at the conference. And you get the buzz out, make some brochures, put up a couple of fancy signs. People are coming in. They want that. People call and they come in because it's 6 o'clock, because it's 7 o'clock, because it's 9 o'clock. And then they appreciate it, and then they tell 2 friends who tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. I figured if we fail, the worst thing that we will do is break even for doctor salaries if we fail.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you keep the patients in your
office.
In your office. You're a better medical home.
Yep.
All right. So look, Dr. Rogu, I think you've got a patient in 15 minutes.
I gotta take my kids to the office for a checkup with Dr. Belvin at 12.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so you have an appointment in 15 minutes.
I live 5 minutes away, so.
All right, but we will not get in the way of preventive care. Brandon and I just can't do that. That would be against our mission. Well, thank you for your time today. I think it's awesome, and I can't wait to run this out there for the public. We'll send you the link.
Yeah.
We'd like to have you back in a little bit, too, in a couple months, so you can give us an update on what you've been up to.
Okay, great. No problem.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Brandon?
No. Grateful for Dr. Rogu to have spent some time with us. You should see all the notes that I wrote down as he was talking. The whole thing is full, and some doodling as well. I do my best thinking while doodling, and yeah, so all good.
Okay.
All right. We'll all talk soon. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Awesome Cast.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye.